And good evening, everybody. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff Lives. And tonight, doing McDuff's Mindfields. We're all the way up to number 140. And look, I'm sorry if I hurt your eyes with this brand new shirt. It's probably, I should have warned you, wear some shades because it's going to be a shock. But it's fall and it's time for a little bit of new wardrobe. So here down at Mystery Island, uh, the UPS truck came by and he dumped off a package with my name on it. And so here we go. I'm not going to hold back. You know, I mean, fall's coming. I grant you that, but it's kind of like a burst of bright red, like the cardinal. I mean, anyway, I feel good. I feel good. A burst of red fall. That's so poetic. Did you make that up, Andy DeBala? Yeah, he's nodding off stage. Yeah, I see him in the green room. He's really getting into this idea. I'm going to send you a red shirt too, Andy. You look good. I swear you'd look good in the red shirt, just like this one. Okay, it'll go with that flag behind you, the American flag there. Absolutely. Yes, goes with my flag. All right, and there's the cardinal up there on top. Good evening, Robert. Good evening, Baker. Ezra being all, Sean being all, neighborhood, and Corky. All right. What a great crowd. Melissa, I'm so glad to have you here in case we need any social work or, a social emergency. We should have a social emergency discussion sometime. What would be the emergency form of social media? I don't know, but we've been thinking a lot about it here at McDuff Channel and ScreamingOspreys.com. So we're. Oh, I'm glad you're at that website, Baker. Tonight. By the way, can I call you Baker? Because I didn't want to just call you A. Um, we haven't met, but I heard Mark call you Baker, so I'll call you Baker unless you don't like it. So let me know. Okay, yeah, Andy's going to show you the website. Uh-oh, but reload it, Andy, so we can see the birds. Sometimes you have to reload it. All right, come on, birds. Or maybe they're in bed to see them. Now, this is the Port Lincoln Osprey live stream over in Australia that's trying to come up. I guess maybe they're already gone to bed over there in Oz. Huh. I'll have to have a look at that, Andy. I don't know why that's not working. Anyway, uh, I will. You say it looks good, though, Baker. Now you got me wondering. I'm gonna go over there and look myself. ScreamingOspreys.com. Sometimes there we go. All right, I've got it now. All right, as long as we're doing this, let me. Share screen. Share that. All right. Now you can see the Osprey Cam feed from Port Lincoln in Australia. And there's three little birds there that I've been watching them as they get fed. I guess mom and dad are out hunting. And now we'll scroll down to the show. And let's start here at the bottom. And down in the lower left, you'll see uh, three blue rectangles. Each one of them represents a channel. The first channel is called McDuff TV. The second one is called Screaming Ospreys. And the third one is called Housatonic Select. And I see that we've got Screaming Ospreys playing now. And I've got one of Mark's uh, videos up there that he's been kind enough to share with me so that I could share with you. And that's going on right now while we do our show live. So after this show, then we'll go back over and see a very special presentation of one of Mark's YouTube strike videos called Yellow Rain Cats. And that'll be at 9 o'clock tonight. So that'll be right after this. And I'm looking forward to sharing that with you in a little while. All right. So that'll be fun. Who got blocked? I don't know. Anyway, oh, do we have a good I don't see any wrenches. Who wants to be a wrench? Anybody? Looks like I could use a wrench or two. So, I'm going to Oh, you know what? I can't because this is Andy's. So Andy, if you can find somebody that wants to be a wrench, uh, you might want to just add a baker. I think Baker would be willing to do it. All right, I'll tell you what, I'm going to take a sip and we will get started. Okay. All right, no problem at all. We'll just get on with the content. So, where do I want to start tonight? I want to start with an FBI report on somebody named General Arthur Trudeau. And actually, Andy, if you want to get a Arthur Trudeau wiki up or something, that would be cool. But hold off posting it until I get through this content that I want to do. This is from a FOIA of, okay, I need to share the screen again. This is from a FOIA of the FBI. And this results of this FOIA are now posted on Internet Archive under FOIA Trudeau, Arthur G. And this is the first page of 60 pages in this particular file. And I just want to read it to you. It's addressed to L.V. Boardman, who is one of the upper level FBI special agents in charge from Belmont, who is also a very, very high, number 3 sometimes if you want to count the pecking order. And the subject is Major General Arthur C. Trudeau, Chief of Staff for Plans, Far East Command, Tokyo, Japan. And in parentheses, formerly Assistant Chief of Staff G2, and it's a security matter, -C, whatever that means. Pursuant to the request of the director, I interviewed yesterday afternoon General Trudeau following his talk with the director. Yeah, I got that up there. Good. Just checking. Following his talk with the director, meaning Hoover. W.C. Sullivan, which is the head of the COINTEL program, and all these guys are COINTEL type, counterintelligence Division 5 FBI guys. No synopsis is furnished because the extreme seriousness of the charges made requires a full reading. Details. The essence of General Trudeau's comments may be summed up as follows. 1. As a result of much study, thought, and experience in government, he has concluded that men of Fabian socialist views, and there's a asterisk that will give us a definition, and possibly some with communist leanings, have penetrated certain policy forming organs of our government to an alarming degree. 2. These men are to be found in very sensitive positions, or, if not actually in such positions, are so located as to be able to influence the thinking of A. the Department of State, B. Central Intelligence Agency, C. Operations Coordinating Board, and that's the OCB, a very important entity we'll talk about some more. D, United States Information Agency, USIA. E, Intelligence Advisory Committee. F, Bureau of Budget. G, National Security Council. And H, academic research units at Harvard, Princeton, MIT, and Johns Hopkins, as well as the Ford and Rockefeller Foundations, who do vital research for the government. 3. The thinking, writing, and related activities of these men have resulted in a soft, vacillating, non decisive, and delayed action program against Soviet Russia and world communism, which serves the purposes of the quote, peaceful coexistence strategy of the communist conspiracy. 4. Such a weak and false American policy program, if not exposed and drastically changed, may ultimately culminate in the complete downfall and annihilation of the United States by the forces of world communism. And therefore, General Trudeau not being able to any longer, because of his transfer to Japan, to carry on the fight against this creeping, subtle menace in the policy forming area of our government, is advising the FBI of all he knows, turning it over to turning over to it written documents in the hopes that the great loyalty, integrity, and courage of the FBI will cause it to take some appropriate action on this grave and vital security issue. General Trudeau also pointed out that the Central Intelligence Agency is developing far too much power in the high policy forming areas of our government. He indicated that if this development is allowed to continue, it may become, in the view of the assumed penetration of CIA by Fabian socialists, seriously inimical to the welfare of the United States. General Trudeau explained that his recent difficulties, already known to the director, which resulted in his being removed from his position as Assistant Chief of Staff G2 and sent to Japan, are directly due to the intense and concentrated opposition he has given to influential men in government of the Fabian socialist views. General Trudeau stated that his own remarks to the FBI on this matter are to be regarded in strict confidence, and are also the names of as are also the names of two of his trusted men who helped develop the information he is furnishing to the FBI. These men are one blank of the Operations Coordination Board and two blank of his own office, that is G2. General Trudeau left the FBI with some documents which show much study and effort on the part of himself and his assistants. They consist of 4 detailed and elaborate charts setting forth the names of individuals, organizations, and committees of the government, 4 pieces of mail, 2 not classified and 2 classified, 1 confidential and 1 top secret. The names of the individuals are those who, in the considered opinion of General Trudeau, may be engaged in advancing Fabian socialist ideas into the highest policy decisions of the United States government. They are listed over 100 names. General Trudeau was advised we would give thought to the matter. The FBI has no other choice, it seems, than to make the most careful study possible of the grave charges levied by General Trudeau. It will require an extensive file review of the persons named, plus a comparative analysis of the policy examples and results furnished with basic Fabian socialist ideas. Um, I'm going to skip ahead to the addendum, which gives you the definition of Fabian socialist. The origin of organized Fabian socialism is traceable to the establishment of the Fabian Society in London, England in 1884, largely as the result of the influence and teachings of Professor Thomas Davidson of New York, who was an occasional visitor in London. The name Fabian was derived from the name of Quintus Fabius Maximus Verrucosus, who became famous for his unique military tactics of avoiding direct battles and in resorting to deliberate procrastination and the using of delaying procedures during his defense of Rome against the attacks of Hannibal. Fabius kept his army always near Hannibal's but never attacked, harassing Hannibal continually but never engaging in direct battle. The Romans grew tired of this, and Fabius was removed from his command and supplanted by two generals who engaged Hannibal in open battle in 216 BC and were completely crushed by Hannibal. Later, by waiting for the right moment, Fabius took Tarentum from Hannibal, a signal victory. The aim of Fabian socialism is to very skillfully permeate every segment of society with socialistic ideas, words, ideals, attitudes, tendencies, and modes of thinking in order to gradually lay the foundation of a slow, steady, peaceful transformation of the social order from capitalism to socialism. The tactics used by Fabian socialists are the military ones of Fabius, but adapted and applied to human relations, namely, a policy of waiting, delay, indirection, avoidance of conflict, concessions, compromises, advances, zigzagging, etc., all of which are to be done with great patience. The motto of the Fabians is, quote, to wait for the right moment patiently, like Fabius when he fought Hannibal. But when the right moment arrives, one must strike energetically so as not to have waited in vain, unquote. The end of Fabian socialism is the elimination of private ownership as an exclusive means of production and the substitution of state or social ownership of the means of production, hence socialism. Well, the memos go on, and 100 names are given, and not a whole lot was done about it by the FBI. And that's interesting to me because what Hoover was doing was observing a war between G2 of the Army, which is the intelligence branch of the Army, G2, where Trudeau worked. And Trudeau studied and came to these opinions that these people in our government were Fabians. Well, first of all, let me just smile and say I was so happy when I found this because I had not there's no original thoughts, okay? But when I first started studying the Fabians 6 months ago, and I realized that this is the economic side of what's going on. The ideas of the London School of Economics, uh, you know, Keynesian economics, which basically is just a way to continually lift all the money out of the poor people and stash it into the already rich's elite accounts. It sounds a lot like Klaus Schwab, doesn't it? It sounds just like Klaus Schwab. It sounds like Klaus Schwab might have been a Fabian and might be a Fabian socialist. So here you had a U.S. Army general uh, and somebody that was in combat, fought in Korea, um, making this report to the FBI because he could no longer function to raise the alarm as a Army G2 specialist. And that was because he got shut down by who? Alan Dulles, of course. It was Alan Dulles that got um, got him fired. I can't remember if it was Truman or Eisenhower, but Dulles was the one that got the president to reassign General Trudeau. Now I'm going to move over to another something new, newer than my, well, not as quite as new as my new shirt, but this new book that just came 3 days ago, and I've already devoured most of it. The Spy Who Would Be Czar by Kevin Coogan, published this year, and it's just hot off the presses, and I can already tell you I love it. I think you're going to probably want to read this yourself. I doubt that I'll be reading the whole book on my show, but I do want to feature it because, as we've been working to understand who is Michael Golanevsky, who is this guy that claimed to be the Michael Romanov, the surviving heir to the Romanov dynasty and treasure, and why? Why was he such a controversial but unknown figure? And we now have, I think, a real scholarly book. I haven't read the whole thing yet, but every time I think maybe he's biased this way or that way, it turns out that he balances out so far as a straight shooter in my mind. We've talked a lot about Tennant Bagley. He's a number of sections in here about him, and wow, it's a great introduction to the whole idea of what was going on in Poland in the 1950s in the spy network. Think how important Poland is when we're talking about the Brzezinski and the Cardinal Wojtyla and the all of the incredible um, Polish influence that has not been ever really talked about on our foreign policy, and then the fact that this is still, even when they were in the shadow of the Soviet Union, they were still an independent country, very different from Russia. So, in terms of learning who was Michael Goleniewski, this book takes you on a tour of the Polish uh, intelligence services from before World War II into the war and afterwards. In the 50s, of course, is where it's most important. But I'm going to skip forward to a chapter. This is chapter 14, and it's called Uncle Sam and the Knights, the Knights. And this is where we're going to get into the uh, Shickshinny Knights of Malta. Okay. Now you remember who General Willoughby is? Yeah, let's start Andy with General Willoughby. Charles Willoughby was actually a German, and he anglicized his name to Willoughby because it sounded a little bit like the. Yeah, let's get a nice big wiki of him. His real name is Adolf Karl Scheppe Weidenbach, and Weidenbach, Willow, Bach, Brook, Willoughby comes from the brook by the willow in German. Born 1892, that makes him my grandfather's contemporary, Heidelberg, German Empire, and died in Naples, Florida, lovely Naples, Florida. Resting place for an awful lot of retired military industrial complex. Anyway, all right, so Willoughby was General Douglas MacArthur's chief of intelligence during World War II and the Korean War. Let's skip forward some, Andy, and I want to get into a little bit of who is Willoughby. As let's go back to the Japan part. There you go. Hang on. Willoughby became a major general 12th April 1945 due to his initiative at the end of the Pacific Campaign. War crimes charges against Shiro Ishii were dispensed with in exchange for information gathered by Unit 731. Who doesn't know by now what Unit 731 is? Okay, you know, right? So this is the guy that says, okay, you just give us your data and you're good. No war crimes for you guys. All right, so this is Willoughby, also known, who was famously referred to by General MacArthur as my fascist, my, or was it Nazi, my Nazi, my private Nazi, something like that. Anyway, the Willoughby is a very much of an elitist, and I dare say a racist. But he is the chief of intelligence for General MacArthur during both World War II and the occupation of Japan, and finally, and also the Korean War until MacArthur gets fired. Okay, sometime in the late 1950s or early 1960s, the Pichel Knights, this is something in the previous chapter, I'm sorry, but established a military affairs committee of leading retired top military officers. They included General Pedro del Valle, General Lemuel Shepard. Remember him? He's a major Marine general. Lieutenant General George Stratemeyer, Major General Charles Willoughby, Brigadier General Bonner Fellers, Admiral Charles M. Cook, and Rear Admiral Francis T. Spellman, among others. Major General Charles Willoughby was the longtime head of military intelligence for General Douglas MacArthur, who referred to him as my pet fascist. Well, there you go. Willoughby retired in 1951 and was especially active in the Pichel Knights. Regular bulletins from the Shickshinny Knights warning about communism were edited by Willoughby. Willoughby also published the Foreign Intelligence Digest, and he was extremely active in the Madrid-based International Committee for the Defense of Christian Culture, reportedly financed in part by Texas multimillionaire H.L. Hunt. The White Book also reprints letters from former General Pedro del Valle, head of the Defenders of the American Constitution, in support of Goleniewski's appointment as Grand Master of the Order. In a 23 May 1966 letter, Del Valle states that Alexei should also become head of the Russian government in exile. A June 1st, 1966 letter from Major General Lemuel C. Shepard endorses the election of the Grand Duke Alexei as Grand Master of the Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem to fill the vacancy caused by the recent demise of the former Grand Master, Count Felix von Luckner. The Knights' link to intelligence and the military, however, upset some European members. From the Tennessee Knights' history, the Prussian Prince Wilhelm Karl, the head of the German Order of St. John, visited Grand Chancellor Pichel in Pennsylvania in 1961 after the death of Grand Duke Cyril's eldest daughter. She was the wife of the Hohenzollern pretender to the throne of Germany, the Prussian Prince Louis Ferdinand. Prince Louis Ferdinand had been a lifelong intimate and employee of Henry Ford and the Ford family. Wilhelm Karl ended Johanniter Orden, that's St. John's Order, the Order of St. John, the German form of it, association with the SOSJ, that's the Order of St. John, the Sovereign, what is it? S-O. Okay, the Shickshinny Order of the Sovereign Order of St. John of Jerusalem, which is the Hospitallers. Now, Andy has got up here a sovereign, an SMOM entry, and this is actually the different one. And maybe this is a good time to explain. There are two major branches or groups calling themselves the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. The first one is the Catholic one, and the second one is the Anglican one. The Catholic one basically wears red crosses, and the Anglican wears black crosses. But they've merged in a way, and I'm not sure how they did that, being of different, who's the Pope, we don't know. But they did, and they work together now in some way. Now, this is a third group that we're talking about, the Shickshinny Knights of Malta, and these people claim to be the descendants of the Russian Knights of Malta, or the Order of St. John, which the Order of St. John Hospitallers of Jerusalem is a long name for the Knights of Malta. And they used to be in Jerusalem, and then they were in Rhodes, and then they were in Malta, and then they got kicked out of Malta, except for they have a small sovereign territory in Rome, that is sovereign military order of Malta's territory. And that's how they get to have passports and diplomatic privileges, such as don't check my bags, if you please, Mr. Customs Man. That kind of privilege. So, yeah, lots of different groups over history have claimed to be the original Knights of Malta, which come from the Knights of Rhodes, which come from the Knights of Jerusalem, the Knights of St. John, the Hospitallers. The Sacred Order of St. John of Jerusalem had lost the majority of its Russian and European membership during the last phases of World War I, when the Russian Guard divisions were thrown into battle in tragic fashion. British and French general staffs directed all battlefield strategy, and therefore many suspected that the slaughter of the elite of their allied Russian forces was part of the globalists' agenda. Much later, the intervention of British and Americans on the side of the Soviet Union during World War II culminated in the great victory for international communism that was the Second World War. Did you hear that? The great victory for international communism that was the Second World War. Okay. The Allies rounded up and incarcerated white Russians for deportation to Stalin's death camps in Operation Keel Haul, a result of an agreement made between Roosevelt, Churchill, and Stalin at the Yalta Conference. Forced repatriation by the Allies resulted in the deaths of thousands and perhaps hundreds of thousands of white Russians by firing squads, or deportation to the Gulag archipelago labor camps. See how the white Russians come into the story here. The consistent action during the 20th century in favor of the communists, with the obvious goal of creating high mortality among anti-communists, was conclusive proof to the Sacred Order of St. John of Jerusalem that the Western governments were controlled by internationalists and communists. Because of this, the SOSJ continued to attract patriotic and nationalistic Western military men to its membership and to operate as an anti communist intelligence agency. Admiral Barry Domville, former head of British naval intelligence, was a long serving member of the SOSJ. It appears that General Douglas MacArthur's entire senior staff was in the order. Skipping ahead, the Shickshinny Knights then may have operated as a cover for sections of the U.S. military still committed to a vision of using far right emigre networks for special warfare operations in spite of strong resistance from the CIA and OPC, the Office of Policy Coordination in particular. Through the Knights, elements in the military maintained their own off the books version of the Volunteer Freedom Corps. Finally, the Knights military network may shed light on a puzzling question that dates back to 1964 when Guy Richards first met Golanewski. Recall that Richards said he assumed Golanowski was crazy until days later, quote, I learned from a team of American investigators that a massive evidence supporting his claim was being collected and it far outweighed the evidence against the claim. I was told, for example, that all four of his sisters had been located. They were reported to be living under rather odd and disarming names in various parts of the world. Then, from independent sources, I was able to establish something which seemed very interesting. I discovered that for a number of years, the leaders of the anti communist, anti Bolshevik secret organization, which has members in Russia, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Germany, and elsewhere, were certain that he was the Grand Duke Alexei, Nicholas's son and heir. Their conviction about this was one of the prime reasons why he moved ahead in the Polish Army intelligence network. Was it possible that they too could be taken in by a faker? Remarkably, the Knights really did have a private intelligence service of a sort centered on Major General Willoughby. The August 1964 edition of the Knights publication Maltese Cross lists the full array of publications and linked to the Willoughby and the Knights. The Maltese Cross reports its associates in the Foreign Intelligence Digest of Washington, D.C., and the International Committee for the Defense of Christian Culture in Bonn, Germany. Why did the Shickshinny Knights seek out Golanewski and promote him as Tsar? Has Golanewski been recruited by some intelligence or emigre network prior to his official defection? Was there some deeper intelligence connection? Had he been contacted by this network after he relocated to New York City? Golanewski's decision to break all ties with the CIA took place in early December 1963. Just a few weeks later, he contacted Robert Speller and declared himself the Tsar. Strong claims demand even stronger evidence, but it is hard to shake the feeling that there might still be more to discover. Knights of Malta Colonel Philip J. Corso, a member of the Military Affairs Committee, played an especially key role in the Golanewski saga. The son of an Italian immigrant father who worked in a steel mill, Colonel Philip Corso grew up in Pennsylvania, not far from Pittsburgh. An engineering student, he was drafted in 1942. After officers training school, Corso was assigned to the 2nd Infantry as an artillery officer, but was quickly recruited into Army Intelligence G2. After training in England by British MI-19, Corso interrogated captured enemy troops, first in North Africa and then in Italy. After Rome fell, he became G2 Assistant Chief of Staff in the Eternal City and reportedly received the Order of the Crown of Italy before leaving Rome in 1947. While Corso served in the Far East as Chief of G2 Special Projects Branch for General MacArthur during the Korean War, he met General Arthur Trudeau. A 1924 West Point graduate during World War II, Trudeau helped plan the Army's amphibious landing tactics in the Pacific. General Trudeau served in Korea under General Matthew Ridgway and commanded the Army's 7th Infantry Division, which fought the bloody Battle of Pork Chop Hill. On the 24th of November 1953, Trudeau was appointed Assistant Chief of Staff of the Army for Intelligence. When asked why he was chosen, Trudeau replied, quote, "I certainly was known as a person who had very great concern about the advance of world communism and the Russians using it as a vehicle for world domination. As a matter of fact, these feelings had come to the surface, I guess, a number of times, even during World War II, when some of us in the Pentagon saw this threat arising. While they were supposedly our great allies, this may have had something to do with it. I never was really told, and I don't really know." Colonel Corso took part in a study group. For the rest of his life, he claimed that in 1953, some 500 sick and wounded American POWs held in North Korea were never exchanged. Corso served on the National Security Council's Operations Coordinating Board. That's the board I spoke of earlier, from 1954 to 57. The OCB was led by C.D. Jackson, a former OSS veteran who specialized in psychological warfare planning. Among his other tasks, Corso was the OCB's liaison to the plotters of the Guatemala coup. They included the CIA's Frank Wisner, the head of the agency's Office of Policy Coordination, the CIA's Action Wing. Corso said that while at NSC, Eisenhower assigned him the task of creating the Volunteer Freedom Corps. After Ike had a heart attack, along with strong opposition from both the CIA and the State Department, the VFC project was abandoned. Corso developed a deep hatred for the CIA and the OPC in particular. In the mid 1950s, a top U.S. Army official named General Lucius Truscott advised against OPC East Bloc operations. A friend of Trudeau, Truscott coordinated CIA activities in Germany, first under the then CIA Director General Walter Bedell Smith. As Deputy Director for Coordination, Truscott used his Army rank as cover while he oversaw CIA operations in Europe. Truscott had been appointed by Bedell Smith to get the agency's OPC network led by Wisner under control, quote unquote. The CIA's Eastern European operations met with repeated failures. Truscott believed the OPC policy was a disaster. If 70 German divisions could not overthrow Stalin, he once asked, what could a handful of agents accomplish? The Joint Chiefs pushed for captive nation units, supplied and trained by the U.S. military on German soil to fight alongside Special Forces operators. On C.D. Jackson's staff at the Operations Coordinating Board, responsibility for salvaging the Guard battalions of emigres fell now to the Hotspur Colonel Philip Corso, who until 1955 had closely liaised with Nelson Rockefeller. For some months, Eisenhower's special assistant for Cold War strategy, now Corso plowed vigorously into the planning stages of a proposal to reactivate the 50 surviving garrisons of Eastern European paramilitaries hanging on in Germany, each running 50 or 60 carbuncular veterans. Corso's working group projected a training nucleus of division strength, Liberation's shock troops, rechristened the Volunteer Freedom Corps. You know who these people are, right? These are the people that are going to be Operation Gladio, the operatives. Now, here's General Trudeau's war. In September 1955, just a few weeks after his dismissal from G2, General Arthur Trudeau circulated a document on the supposed Fabian socialist infiltration of the Eisenhower government that included accusations against top officials at both CIA and the State Department. Trudeau explained his long-standing resistance to the CIA this way, colon, unquote, unfortunately, the residual capability of Army covert intelligence with cover in Eastern Europe after the war was resented by the Central Intelligence Agency to an alarming degree. I sensed this on many, many occasions. In fact, it always was a factor in any actions that we took and was a real contributing factor to difficulties that developed in my own relationship, particularly with the covert segment of the CIA. Trudeau also took aim at the CIA's role in creating the National Intelligence Estimate that helped set long-term government policy. Trudeau claimed the CIA's estimate of the Soviet Union was not based on facts, but rather on CIA ideology that adopted an apologetic approach to Russia. But why was the CIA soft on Russia? Allegations of General Arthur S. Trudeau submitted the names of 122 top government officials, many from the CIA, whom he labeled Fabian socialists, and whose actions contributed to the distorted NIE estimate. Trudeau provided the FBI with a copy of the document so the Bureau could conduct its own investigation. Among the names listed were the CIA's Sherman Kent, William P. Bundy, Frank Wisner, a blanked out name, Tracy Barnes, Richard Bissell, Richard Helms, and of all people, James Angleton. From a October 7th, 1955 FBI memo, Memorandum 10-655 indicated there would be a new eruption in relations between CIA and G2. James Angleton of CIA furnished information indicating that blank of G2 has been disseminating derogatory information concerning CIA operations and employees to a Mr. X, described as a Democrat, a former government official with outstanding reputation. CIA story is that blank went to Mr. X with a motive of striking at CIA. Mr. X subsequently came to CIA and related all the facts. General Trudeau furnished the names of individuals and possibly some communists who he stated had penetrated certain policy forming organs of our government, including the State Department, CIA, the OCB, the Planning Controlling Group, and the Planning Board, as well as Harvard, Princeton, Johns Hopkins, MIT, the Ford and Rockefeller Foundations. Well, this is what General Trudeau did in 1955. And this laid I'm going to try to wrap it up because we're running out of time. This laid the foundation for Golanewski, who in 1958 first sent a letter through the U.S. consulate, I believe in Bern, Switzerland. And the letter was addressed to J. Edgar Hoover because Golanewski knew that the CIA was compromised. Isn't this is exactly the kind of thing that McDuff would have been involved in. And I actually have Golanowski living in New York in the early and mid 60s. And I do have a picture of my dad on a occasion he went up there by himself to for some business reason, and I've got a picture of him standing there in front of the old World's Fair. And I wonder if he had gone up there to meet the Tsar himself, Michael Golanowski, who we don't know. I mean, nobody has ever resolved whether he possibly is the heir to the Romanov dynasty or not. But we do know that he, like General Trudeau, was against the CIA. And what happened to him was tragic because he thought he was giving up to the FBI, but the CIA grabbed him and they kept him in safe houses and they wouldn't let him see Hoover. They never let him see J. Edgar Hoover. So can we not see how Golanowski, who becomes a Shickshinny Knight Grand Master, Shickshinny Knight Grand Master, along with Philip Corso, who is also a Shickshinny Knight, who is associated with General Charles Willoughby, MacArthur's fascist, and see that these people all are united by a concern that I call Fabianism, the Fabian socialist plan. Now, I've got 2 or 3 of my Mindfields already about Fabianism and the socialist outcome of Fabianism and how it is so intimately tied to eugenics and population reduction. And that's why I think this is so important, is to recognize that people who have been slammed as, right-wing kooks are now being revealed as prophets. Because that's exactly what we have. We have a British London School of Economics, Henry Kissinger, Wall Street, Rothschild, Morgan, Stanford economy that's being run like an old Roman Empire, where they dilute the currency as a way of financing their continued fun and games. So our currency keeps getting diluted, just like the Roman currency that used to be, silver coins, and then it just started becoming more and more base and more base, and the people, what could you do? You had a coin and you had to spend it, but if you started realizing that the silver's no longer in it, it becomes a little hard to justify giving away valuable things for worthless coin or worthless pieces of paper. Okay, now let me invite you to go over to Screaming Ospreys with me in just a moment, and let's see what's on over there.
Now, does that mean that they have no connection? Far from it. Go to the very last page, former doctoral students. The very last one, actually the very last line on this 43-page CV is Allison Totura, PhD, fall 2007, spring 2014, and at USAMRIID. In addition to being on Jeopardy in 2016, she was also the last person to produce a paper with Sina Bavari at USAMRIID 2018, Coronavirus Antiviral Drug Discovery. Gonna like this one. Dr. Margaret or Peggy Hamburg, the FDA director for 7 years under the President Obama administration. Yes, the one that made the EUA, or Emergency Use Authorization, possible, which was made into law at the end of 2016 and just before Trump became president of the United States. Her billionaire husband, Dr. Peter Fitzhugh Brown, was a computer scientist, AI expert, artificial intelligence, and is chief executive officer of Renaissance Technologies. And according to Wikipedia,
All right, I'm going to kill the audio, but you can see if you just go to screamingospreys.com that you press the bottom one there where it says Housatonic Select. And as soon as we get to the 9 o'clock hour, the show should start. It's episode 91.7, Yellow Rain Cats. And this is a special presentation courtesy of Mark Kulak, whose channel has been under attack from time to time. And now we're trying to work a way around that so that his archive stuff can be shown. And we're going to take advantage of that tonight. So let me get back to the screen here and thank you all for being with me tonight. If you see what I'm trying to say tonight about the Golanowski and trying to get to J. Edgar Hoover, because even though he's a Russian and a white Russian and Hoover is an American, they still both have a common enemy, and that is the philosophy of Fabian socialism and it being expressed by and through the CIA. So once again, invite you to go over to the website screamingospreys.com and enjoy Mark's show on Yellow Rain Cats. And later on at 10 o'clock, I think Andy has a show. Is that right, Andy? All right, Andy's on at 10 o'clock, Neighborhood News Studio. Thanks again.